I never expected the heartbreak of losing my dream job over an unbelievable decision. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The office was bustling, laughter echoing, but all I could hear was the thud of my heart in my chest. My hands trembled as I clutched the email. The weight of each word felt like a lead weight pulling me under. We regret to inform you that my had spun. I had poured my soul into this position, my dreams woven into every project. My colleagues were my lifelines. Sam, with his infectious smile, Eliza, the steady rock, they had cheered me on every step of the way. But there was something odd about that fateful day. I had sensed it. A quiet murmur had filtered through the halls, whispers of a decision I couldn't fathom. The air felt heavy, charged, like the edge of a storm. Did you hear? Sam had asked, eyebrows knitted with worry. They're making some final calls, final calls? I had echoed, heart pounding. We had all believed in our vision. In that moment, reality seemed to twist, like a shadow creeping slowly into light. I brushed it off, but unease snaked through me. Hours later, as I stared at my screen, that feeling recoiled. Eyes darting over the words again, each one sharp and cruel. My dream job, snatched away. A decision based on an unbelievable incident. What incident? My skin tingled with panic. I felt exposed, vulnerable, like I stood in front of 1,000 eyes dissecting every breath. Around me, the silence grew palpable. The chatter faded, replaced by curious glances. I could hear my breath quicken, a drum in the suffocating stillness. Eliza approached, her face stricken, lip trembling. You didn't do anything wrong, right? No, I whispered, a lump in my throat. But doubt gnawed at the edges of my sanity. My phone buzzed, an alert pinging insistently. A message from an unknown number. My fingers hesitated. Should I open it? Some strange tickle of dread clawed at me. What if it held answers I didn't want to know? Time stretched, each second weighty and unbearable. The energy in the room shifted, eyes darting my way, heavy with speculation. Then, just like that, the door burst open. In walked the manager, eyes locked on me, storm clouds brewing beneath the surface. The tense atmosphere coiled tighter, like a fishhook willingly sinking into flesh. I could almost taste the anticipation in the air, thick and foreboding. Can I have a word? My heart skipped. I realized this was it. The moment of truth. What would this meeting reveal? In those precious seconds, terror swirled within me. I could sense their judgment, could feel each heartbeat echoing off the walls. There was more to this than I knew, secrets lurking in the shadows. I swallowed hard, a sudden rush of bravery battling fear. But just before I rose from my chair, everything disintegrated. A loud crash echoed from the hallway, followed by frantic voices. Was something terrible happening outside? My gut tightened. What secrets lay behind this unsteady facade? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The noise from the hallway intensified, blurring the line between my apprehension and the urgency of the situation outside. The crash had transformed into a chaotic cacophony, shattering glass, frantic shouts, the clatter of equipment. My heart raced as time seemed to expand and contract simultaneously, each heartbeat hammering a fear into my chest. What was happening? Eliza's fingers tightened around my wrist, grounding me, even as her expression mirrored my own turmoil. Should we? She began, but the thought of abandoning my chair amid the chaos felt impossible. Then a figure appeared in the doorway. Lucas, one of the junior technicians, the color drained from his face. "They're evacuating," he gasped, his voice a tremor of panic. "Something's gone wrong in the server room. We need to get out now." Adrenaline surged through me, fusing with the dread pooling in my stomach. "What happened?" I pressed, desperate for clarity. "Don't know," he replied, eyes wide. "But it's bad. They said we might have a gas leak or something." The words hung heavy in the air, cloaked in uncertainty. My mind spun as instincts kicked in. Was this all linked somehow to my earlier dread? Were the unspoken words of the staff the needles of awareness that had pricked at my consciousness? A dull thud resonated from the hallway, followed by a series of panicked cries. The office felt like a taut string ready to snap. Eliza was pulling me towards the door, her determination a flickering candle against the encroaching darkness. "Come on," she urged, and I finally stood, taking quick steps after her as the atmosphere thickened with the scent of something acrid. Around us, colleagues were rising one by one, leaving their desks in haste. The camaraderie that had held us together now flared into primal chaos. As we reached the entrance, a figure stepped into our path. It was Sam. His shirt was crumpled, and his hair disheveled. "You shouldn't be here," he shouted over the rising din, concern etching lines deep into his forehead. "They're trying to usher everyone out, but what about?" I began, visions of what could be happening in the server room flashing in my mind. "Just go," Sam urged, his eyes darting behind him. In that moment, something inside me cracked. This looming chaos, whatever it was, seemed headed straight towards me. As Eliza grasped my hand, pulling me into the throng of bodies weaving out of the office, I caught a glimpse of Sam's face, twisted in a mix of unease and something deeper, something like apology. Questions danced on my lips, but the urgency thrummed too sharply to articulate them. Outside, the sunlight hit us like a cold blast. I inhaled deeply, trying to draw in the fresh air overlaid with fear, panic, and an undercurrent of hope. The sky was bright, illuminated, yet my heart felt encased in shadows. We rounded the corner towards the parking lot where groups of my colleagues had gathered, and the air was suddenly filled with an unsettling atmosphere, an amalgamation of anxious chatter and fear-laden whispers. My eyes scanned the group, searching for familiar faces, standing awkwardly, eyes wide, and mine caught on the figure of our department head, David. He seemed to be organizing something, waving his arms to bring us together, a rallying point amid chaos. "Listen up. We think there might be a technical failure, something beyond our control. I need everyone to remain calm." I glanced at Eliza, her expression a mirror of my own uncertainty. There was no way this was just a coincidence. The other shoe was dropping, and I could feel it, vibrating along my spine. "Hey, let's stick together," Lucas said, joining us. "If it's something big, we'll need to know how to react." The crowd surged with anxious whispers, piecing together fragments of information, each word a puzzle that ached to be completed. We were navigating a storm, and I felt the weight of every gaze upon me, curious, suspecting, as if they could feel the ripples of my inner turmoil. Then, just as everything seemed to reach a boiling point, David raised his voice above the murmurs. "I need to address something. Crucial. This will affect us all." Every soul drew closer, tension crackling in the air like static. My heart thrummed in my chest, urging me to listen, to dig deeper into this maze of chaos and fear. But then, out of the crowd, I spotted a figure, an unfamiliar face stepping forward, a stranger with a clipboard who had not been part of our office fabric. They exchanged hushed words with David, glancing furtively at me. A new wave of apprehension washed over me. Who was this person, and why were they looking at me that way? The crowd fell silent, urgency filling the air. As I took a step back, trying to grasp what was happening, David's voice cut through the silence with a sharp edge. "We have reason to believe that there's more at play here than we initially thought," and there it was, like a ghost re-emerging from the fog of despair. The missing pieces of my whole world suddenly coalesced. Was it possible that the circumstance of my departure from the job was not an isolated incident? My breath caught in my throat, heart racing as I realized, painfully, that this storm was far from over. The truth loomed like an unexpected tempest, waiting to unleash its fury. Today, we stand on the edge of something unknown, David continued, locking his gaze on me. And we'll need to navigate it together. As if on cue, the stranger stepped forward, meeting my eyes with a knowing expression that shivered down my spine. We may need your help to uncover the truth. And just like that, the world turned to gray. The shadows deepened as uncertainty gripped my heart. A chilling revelation lingered in the air. I was entwined in something bigger than a job. And I had no idea how to escape. The commotion in the parking lot felt like it was swallowing me whole, the voices of my colleagues merging into a distant hum. I stood at the center of that whirlpool, my heart thundering against my ribcage, while the world spun faster than I could comprehend. The stranger with the clipboard, their penetrating gaze still fixed on me, seemed to embody the very unknown that David had spoken of. Help? The word slipped out, barely a whisper, but the stranger nodded as if it had been a spoken commitment. Feeling Eliza squeeze my hand tighter, I tried to regain some semblance of control over my spiraling thoughts. What kind of help could I provide in a situation wrapped in layers of confusion and dread? Let's regroup inside. David raised his voice once more, cutting through the noise with the authority of a captain steering a ship through a storm. We need to assess the situation before we make any hasty decisions. Eliza turned to me, her calm demeanor faltering for just a moment as she searched my eyes. I could see her anxiety mirrored in the quickening pulse of her throat. Are you okay? She asked gently. I forced a nod, though it felt weighty and hollow. With the stranger still watching me, the weight of unspoken questions hung thick in the air. I had spent months pouring my soul into this job, my dreams entwined with the very essence of that place. The possibility of it all crumbling now twisted my stomach into knots. As we shuffled back inside the building, the stark fluorescent lighting did little to calm the shadows of uncertainty lurking in the corners. A low murmur of panic filled the air, the emotional tempers of my colleagues flaring up in sporadic bursts. It felt like we were on the precipice of something monumental, each second drawing us closer to the edge. David took charge again, herding us toward the conference room where a flickering overhead projector cast shadows across the wall. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could see that many were struggling to wrap their minds around the Chausan insatiable hunger for clarity gnawed at us all. All right, he began, trying to inject a modicum of order into the proceedings. With what we know or don't know at this point, we have to stay vigilant. I need everyone to remain calm. We're working on something, but we might have to make quick decisions. Decisions? I whispered to Eliza, panic rising in my chest. What kind of decisions? But before she could respond, the door swung open with a force that sent ripples of surprise through the room. The stranger strode in, clipboard held close, their expression a mixture of urgency and unwelcome resolve. I need to speak with you all, they said, locking eyes with David before turning towards me, their gaze unwavering. What's your name? David asked, a tone of authority embedded in his words. Doctor. Maya Ellis. The stranger's voice was smooth, almost soothing amidst the rising chaos. I'm with the Internal Safety Committee. We need to discuss the potential implications of what just happened. The words hung in the air like a pendulum, and my heart sank. Implications? I echoed. My mind raced with ideas, possibilities that festered with fear. What was happening? What could be the long-term fallout of whatever calamity awaited us? In reply, Maya gestured to the projector screen, where a series of graphs and obscure technical jargon began to illuminate the dark shadows of doubt. What you're seeing here points to irregularities that may be linked to external tampering with our main systems. Followed closely by what seems to be a. Before she could finish, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, a leading edge of disaster slicing through our fleeting composure. Panic ensued as people turned to face the door, hearts racing as fear ignited a new kind of turmoil, deeper than what we had just begun to fathom. Stay together. David called, positioning himself at the forefront of the group. But as I clung to Eliza's hand, the depth of the wild uncertainty shook me with a deep dread. I could feel the uncertainty expanding, seeping into our thoughts and compressing my chest as the reality of the moment solidified. This is outside intervention, I thought, the truth dawning like a heavy weight on my shoulders. What do they want with us? Maya turned sharply, a sense of realization igniting her features. We need to leave, she declared, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. It's not safe here. Just as the gravity of her words took root, the air shifted. A figure slipped through the doorway, this one familiar yet profoundly altered. Sam emerged, his face pale and set with grim resolution, as he locked eyes with me. We need to talk, he said, each word deliberate, as though presenting something monumental, and I sensed the reckoning hanging like an anvil above us. Everything felt poised on the brink, our safety, our trust, even our very identities, all balanced precariously between revelation and chaos. And as my pulse raced, I understood, nothing would ever be the same again. With the shadows creeping ever closer, I stood at the crossroads of truth and peril, left to confront the horrifying possibilities echoing in my mind. The tension in the conference room was palpable, each person's breath a shallow gasp suspended in time. Sam's presence cut through the chaos, bringing with it a weight of urgency that I could neither ignore nor easily understand. As he stepped closer, the flickering overhead lights cast disconcerting shadows over his face, accentuating the worry lines etched deeply into his forehead. Sam, I said, struggling to regain my composure. What's going on? The question felt inadequate, yet it was all I could muster as fear clawed at my throat that he hesitated, glancing toward Eliza, who stood resolutely by my side, her grip still firm around my hand. It's about the audit, he replied, voice strained. That's what triggered all this. There's more at stake here than anyone realized. More? David interjected, his demeanor shifting to a blend of disbelief and anger. What do you mean more, Sam? Are you saying that this is related to the Maya? Sam turned to the stranger, his voice firm. Is there any chance the tampering was deliberate? The way he asked the question made my heart race faster. There was an implication there that felt both terrifying and tangible. That I can't speak definitively, Maya replied, her expression grave as she surveyed the room filled with anxious faces. But the anomalies in our data suggest a deliberate effort to disrupt our processes. And if that's the case, we're looking at something much larger than just internal mistakes. As my mind thrashed against the implications of her words, the room filled with murmurs. The once familiar faces of my colleagues distorted into expressions of dread and suspicion. The stakes were rising, we were no longer just caught in a corporate mess but entangled in something far more sinister. Settle down. David shouted, his voice booming against the backdrop of growing unrest. Maya, we need to talk strategies. We can't let this sabotage weigh us down. We need to be resilient. But as he spoke, a low thud echoed from outside the conference room, cutting through my panicked thoughts like a jagged sword. I could feel the walls closing in, pressing against me as I took a step back, lost in an ocean of anxiety. Sam remained stationary, his unwavering gaze locked on me. We don't have much time, he said with a newfound urgency. And if you trust me, you'll listen. There are people who want to keep this all under wraps, us included. Eliza's grip on my hand tightened. What are you saying? Someone inside the organization is involved, he replied, his voice a hushed urgency. Cooperation isn't just about protocols. It's about uncovering the truth without endangering ourselves further. Uncovering what? I asked, my heart racing as I searched for answers in Sam's eyes. What truth? His response hung in the air, heavy and charged, as though revealing the depths of a nightmarish reality. Before he could respond, the door burst open again, revealing a tall figure in a black suit, one who exuded authority with the unsettling air of someone who thrived in control. Everyone, I need you to, he began, but his voice trailed off as he met the scrutinous looks from my colleagues. Who are you? David demanded, stepping forward. You don't belong here. I am Agent Harris, he replied, unfazed. And I'm here to secure this premises. You need to comply for your own protection. The immediate reaction in the room was a fusion of fear and resistance. Protection from what? Eliza shot back, refusing to back down. You want to help? Or do you work for them? Agent Harris turned to Eliza, his expression shifting slightly, revealing a glimmer of respect. "You're being targeted," he said quietly, as though connecting with the reality that bound us together. "It's bigger than you realize. The tampering, the process disruptions, it's all connected to a data breach that could make you the scapegoat." My heart sank at the phrase, a word that felt sharper than any knife. Scapegoat. I could sense the chaos in the room intensifying and the fear morphing into palpable anger. Whispers turned to shouts as my colleagues processed the implication of their new reality. "Do you really expect us to believe you?" David challenged, face taut with defiance. "Who do you really work for?" The atmosphere crackled with doubt as accusations blended into the chaos, and I felt myself reeling. I could barely keep up, swept away from the path I thought I understood. All these months building my career, witnessing the collapse of what I thought was undeniable trust, it all felt like fragile glass shattering underfoot. As the argument continued to escalate, I turned to Sam, seeking clarity amidst the maelstrom. "What should we do?" I whispered, every fiber in me urging him to provide a lifeline. His eyes darkened, filled with an emotion I couldn't read, but one that seemed painfully familiar, fear coupled with determination. "I'll figure it out," he promised, squeezing my hand before turning his gaze toward the unfolding chaos before us. But just then, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, and instinctively, I pulled it out. The screen glowed with a text that made my blood run cold. "Meet me in 10 minutes. Bring no one. You're in danger." Fingers trembling, I glanced up at Sam, caught in a disorienting whirlpool of emotions. What had I just uncovered? What lay ahead? My heart pounded as dread soaked through, and the darkness crept regretfully closer, casting an ominous shadow over a future that now felt utterly uncharted. I felt my breath quicken, panic rising as the weight of the message settled over my shoulders like a cloak of fear. My heart raced, a relentless drumbeat against the unsettling backdrop of chaos erupting in the room around me. "What is it?" Eliza asked, her voice a sharp whisper, as she caught sight of my expression. I struggled to meet her gaze, my mind racing to process what lay ahead. "It's a text," I replied, my voice barely above a breath. "A warning." "From who?" Sam pressed, anxiety etching deeper lines across his face. "What does it say?" With shaking hands, I revealed the screen, the words pulsing with weighty urgency. "Meet me in 10 minutes. Bring no one. You're in danger." A murmur spread through the room like wildfire, fueled by curiosity and dread. The chaotic discussions faltered as the reality of my predicament sunk in, sharp eyes turning to me as if I held the key to our collective understanding. Yet within me, I felt lost, burdened by the knowledge that while I stood at the center of a maelstrom, the safety of the others weighed heavily upon my heart. "Are you going?" Eliza questioned, her weariness surfacing as she watched me decide whether to act on the ominous request that I don't know. I felt torn, my instincts urging caution, yet that same relentless pull toward the truth and the person I'd never met. Perhaps my own safety was a distant concern when it came to safeguarding those around me. "Maya, you can't go alone," Sam said firmly, stepping closer, interposing himself between me and the chaos swirling in the room. "You might trigger something more dangerous. We need a plan." In the backdrop of uncertainty, I could see Agent Harris observing us, his expression unreadable but filled with a subtle tension. "Taking action is crucial," he interjected, more a statement than a suggestion. "But if you choose to go, keep your wits about you. This isn't just an isolated event, this is a web of risk you're stepping into." The urgency of the moment pulsed like a heartbeat, and a part of me felt that every second spent hesitating was a second closer to potential ruin. Yet, leaving my colleagues felt profoundly wrong. What had begun as standing together against the chaos now felt like a fracturing group, their minds reeling from the possibilities of betrayal and danger. "Is anyone stronger than fear?" I asked, testing the waters with a quiver in my voice. "We can't let this divide us. If I go, I won't be alone. We go together or not at all." As I spoke those words, I felt a flicker of hope. The stirring of a shared purpose ignited the room, even amid the spiraling unease. "Count me in," Eliza said, her determination pouring forth as she pushed through the fray to stand resolutely beside me. "I'll find a way," Sam echoed, glancing at Harris for a moment before fixing his gaze on me, his resolve unquestionable. Others began to nod, and for a brief instant, we felt united, a band prepared to face whatever shadows lurked outside the door. The danger isn't just external. This goes deeper, Agent Harris cautioned, though his voice held a note of begrudging respect as he acknowledged our resolve. "But if that's your choice, let's proceed with caution." The clock ticked and tension swirled, but where there had once been confusion, I felt the stirrings of camaraderie. With our paths laid open, I straightened my spine, urgency igniting my senses as we prepared to step into the unknown. Every instinct screamed against potential betrayal, yet the flickering flame lit within us pushed me forward. 10 minutes, I murmured to the group, steeling myself against the vulnerability of the moment. "We need to make it count," but just as we began to formulate a plan, Sam's phone rang, its piercing tone cutting through the tension like a knife. He retrieved it from his pocket, his face shifting as he glanced at the screen. "It's the boss," he said, eyes widening slightly at what he was seeing. "What do they want?" Eliza pressed, the air in the conference room thick with suspense now electrified by dread. He answered, the urgency evident in his voice, and I strained to catch his side of the conversation. Sam's brow furrowed, and with every passing moment, I could read the gravity of what he was hearing. "No," he said, abruptly, slamming his hand on the table. "That's not possible. We're in the middle of a situation here. I can't just." He fell silent, and dread began to curl in my stomach as he turned to face me, the light in his eyes dimming. "We need to get out of here now," he said, clarity ringing through his panic. "There's been a breach. They're threatening our safety, Maya. You're not just in danger, they've discovered your involvement in this. We need to move fast before they reach you." His words hung like a storm cloud, darker than anything I could have anticipated. While unwavering courage surged within me, fear coiled tightly around my heart, a beast ready to unleash chaos. It suffocated my thoughts, and my mind raced, scrambling for a plan not only to shield myself but to protect everyone I cared for. "If they know about me, they'll come for the rest of us," I replied, my instincts kicking in. "We split up. It's the only way to obscure our patterns. I'll go alone to buy you all time. No. Eliza shouted, her unwavering gaze locking with mine. "We do this together, no matter what. You're risking everything, and after everything we've faced, we cannot abandon each other now." Another pulse of desperate urgency coursed through me, echoed by the defiance reflected in the eyes of my colleagues. We were thrust into the uncertain abyss, edging closer toward a terrifying truth, but perhaps in that small interconnectedness, we could find our strength. But just as our desires for solidarity solidified, the lights flickered ominously overhead once more, plunging us into darkness. My heart raced even faster, uncertainty mingling more fiercely with fear as I realized that our moment of decision had dwindled. Nothing about the unfolding storm promised safety, and the harsh truth that I needed to face echoed within me. We were running out of time. Suddenly, the door swung wide open, and a group of shadowy silhouettes rushed in, their faces obscured, the tension erupting into palpable fear. My heart dropped as I realized the strangers served a far darker purpose than mere obstruction. With rising terror, I felt the world begin to spin out of control. It was too late, we were trapped, but with every heartbeat, I felt the fire of determination swirl within me, igniting the fierce hope of uprising against the weight of despair. The flickering lights created a distorted silhouette of the intruders, highlighting a chaos I had only ever seen on television. My heart drummed an urgent message in my ears, drowning out the shouts and frantic movement around me. In a heartbeat, Sam shoved Eliza behind him, his protective instincts flaring. "Stay back," he yelled as he stepped forward, trying to create a barrier between our group and the encroaching shadows. But my gaze was fixed on the faces that were beginning to emerge from the gloom, faces that bore expressions of cold determination mixed with something else, something darker. "Get down!" I shouted, the primal urge orchestrating the fight-or-flight response flaring deep within me that I could feel the adrenaline pulsing through my veins as the panic-stricken air enveloped us, pushing us toward that edge I had feared. Instinctually, I grabbed the closest object, a metal chair, and positioned it defensively in front of me as I tried to assess our options, desperate for us to reclaim a sense of control. As the figures stepped closer, their intent became clear. This wasn't just an intimidation tactic, this was an attack. I could only catch fleeting glimpses of their eyes, glinting with reminiscent familiarity that twisted my stomach in knots. They were coming for me, and the suffocating weight of that revelation pushed against my chest. "Who are you?" I called out, surprised at my own voice coming out steady despite the turmoil within. "Your past has come to collect," one of the figures replied, a smooth voice weaving through the rustic confusion of the room. "We are here to discuss your little game." A game? My heart sank at the implication that the danger I had inadvertently opened my life to was no innocent occurrence but the climax of a long-drawn battle filled with consequences. As I fumbled with my emotions, I felt the familiar sting of betrayal creeping along the edges of my mind. Deep down, I recognized that I had dabbled in shadows I wasn't prepared to confront. Sam's voice cut through the fog of my thoughts, raised with a fierce intensity. "You will not touch her," he demanded, his protective demeanor igniting a small spark of bravery in me. "Touch her? That would imply she's worthy of our consideration," the figure mocked, an unhealthy laugh escaping their lips that sent shivers down my spine. My gut twisted with an urgency that urged me to act, not to let them sway the narrative. Eliza stepped beside me, her hand clutching mine tightly, forging a resolve that we could fight together. "We've made choices, and we will own them. But you won't take her from us." Her fierce statement dripped with defiance, a stark contrast to the looming shadows around us. As if they had all rehearsed for this moment, the figures advanced, and I seized the opportunity to step forward, breaking away from Sam and Eliza's protective barrier. "If you want me, you'll take us all." Nothing less. The boldness of my words seemed to catch them off guard. For a fleeting moment, confusion flickered across their faces, offering a glimmer of hope that perhaps I had momentarily disrupted their sinister agenda. Yet, I could feel the ground beneath me trembling, my breath quickening with the weight of my choice. "Such bravery, but foolishness is often born of desperation," the same figure growled, taking a decisive step closer, forcing me to stand firm against the rising tide of fear that gnawed at my resolve. The tension was palpable, our fates interwoven in an intricate web of choice and chance. I could sense panic rising within my colleagues, their collective strength pulling against my resolve as they prepared to defend me. I glanced back at Sam and Eliza, their steadfast presence blazing in stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded us. "Don't worry, Maya," Eliza whispered, her voice soft but unwavering, a lifeline in the chaos. "We will find a way through this together." But the moment of unity was fleeting, a wave of uncertain dread swept over me. They were closing in, each step heavy with promise of resolve, of danger, and of shadows yearning to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. They were willing to take everything, and I knew our small flicker of hope was threatened by the embers of despair. As their intentions became clearer, I felt an unexpected surge of warmth. It blossomed from the connections and memories shared with Sam and Eliza, reinforcing my determination to protect everything I had. I glanced around for anything we could use, a makeshift weapon, or an escape route. But an unanticipated sound cut through the tense zone, a soft knocking against the emergency exit. The door trembled slightly as if imbued with a life of its own, and every eye turned toward it nearly collectively, any hope barely igniting against the encroaching chaos. "Go!" Sam shouted suddenly, urgency filling his voice, and my heart sank further as I realized he was ready to sacrifice himself for us. But with a muffled crash, the door swung open, revealing yet another figure, cloaked in shadow yet radiating an air of authority that transcended our immediate nightmare. The sudden entrance shifted the battlefield, throwing the attackers into disarray. "Maya!" the newcomer called, igniting a flicker of recognition deep within me. "Liam?" I gasped, my voice tinged with disbelief. This was the last person I expected to see, caught in the ripples of my troubled timelines. His presence was a signal of hope, but it threatened to deepen the complexities of the conflict thrust upon us. But just before I could plead for clarity, the figures surrounding us lunged ahead, their destructive path aimed directly at Liam. Instinctively, I leaped forward, propelled by a mixture of desperation and hope, ready to shield him from whatever darkness lay ahead. In that moment, I knew we were all standing on the precipice of a decision that could change everything, not just for us, but for all those caught in the web of choices we had yet to fully comprehend. With each breath, I could sense a violent storm brewing just beneath the surface, one that promised to unravel everything we thought we knew and redefine the boundaries of our lives or destroy them altogether. And as the tide of darkness swirled toward us, I understood deeply that there would be no turning back. The choices we made now would echo far beyond this moment, reaching into the very essence of our dreams, our fears, and ultimately, our fate. The collision of bodies erupted like thunder through the room, chaos unraveling as I lunged forward to protect Liam. My heart raced, not just with adrenaline but with layers of forgotten emotions that threatened to surface. Memories flooded in, moments shared, friendships built on laughter, and icy silences that stretched before us like an abyss. But here he was, an unexpected anchor in a storm that raged on, and I couldn't let the darkness close in on him. As I moved to intercept the advancing figures, a weight slammed into me from behind, a heavy, familiar force that I recognized instantly as Sam. "Maya, no," he shouted, his arms wrapped protectively around me, pulling me back, but my eyes were glued on Liam. Fear flashed within his eyes as he took a step back, then seized the opportunity to slip past us and engage the shadowy figures. It was as if time slowed, painting the scene in agonizing detail, Liam facing the menacing figures, unyielding in the face of the storm we'd conjured. Despite the raw edge of panic coursing through me, I felt a tremor of admiration surge within my chest. But there was no time to dwell on it, the air crackled with danger, and I had to act fast. "Eliza, help him!" I shouted, but she was already moving, her determination a glowing ember glowing bright against the heaviness around. They were a team now, a force born from desperation. The air was electric, charged with every unarticulated fear and unhealed wound we bore, collectively fueling a resistance we never knew we had. In the brief moment of camaraderie, I focused my fear into strength, reaching for the metal chair I had dropped earlier. It was still cold beneath my hands as I swung it toward the nearest intruder, channeling every ounce of anger and disappointment into that movement. The chair collided with a guttural thud, the impact reverberating through my bones, but as the illusion of control settled around me, the shadows began to shift uneasily. "You're too late, Maya," the figure with the mocking laughter snarled, now advancing with renewed fury. "The past cannot be escaped, it binds you with chains you'll never break." A twisted smirk emerged on his face, reminding me that this confrontation was far from random. It was personal. My choices were being dragged from the depths, unearthing consequences I thought I had buried long ago. The knowledge twisted in my gut, feeding the growing storm inside. With one swift movement, one of the attackers seized the edge of the chair, wrenching it from my grasp before slamming it down, the sound echoing like the finality of a verdict. I stumbled back, my heart sinking as helplessness crept in. "Enough of this nonsense," another figure roared, their temper snapping as they pulled back for a strike that would leave me defenseless. But as time slowed, something deep within me ignited a flicker of deep-seated resilience. Just as the spiraling chaos began to drown out my courage, a warm hand found mine, Liam's. Our fingers intertwined like roots anchoring a fragile tree against the storm. His eyes locked onto mine, fierce resolve igniting something deep within. "Don't lose yourself to their darkness. We fight together," he urged, and for the briefest moment, hope dared to bloom inside the suffocating abyss, and then, as if fate had decided to dangle one last shred of hope before extinguishing it, the voice of a bystander penetrated the fray. "You don't have to fight against your shadows. You can change." A newcomer shouted, a stranger whose presence added an unexpected layer of complexity, plunging us deeper into the tangled web that had ensnared our lives. The figures hesitated, glancing at one another as doubt rippled through their ranks. I held on to Liam's hand, feeling the life force flow between us, the connection igniting more fire than I would have believed possible. This was our chance not just to survive the fray but to reclaim ourselves amidst the turmoil, yet before we could pivot toward this glimmer of hope, a new figure exploded onto the scene, unexpected but unmistakable. Claire, my former colleague, stepped forth from the shadows with pigment of defiance coating her eyes. "Stop," she shouted, an authority behind her voice sending a tremble through the air. "What are you doing here?" I gasped, the mingled emotions and memories colliding like tidal waves, high and unforgiving. She was once a trusted friend, but the bitter hatred for my abrupt departure lingered between us like a looming specter. "What I should have done a long time ago," Claire declared, stepping boldly forward. "I've seen the consequences of this battle. It's tearing you apart. You can end it, Maya. But we must work together. In the depths of my disillusionment, her words flickered, painting the canvas of my feelings with fresh strokes of possibility. Could I trust her after everything? Had she come to help or to condemn me? But as the figures advanced again, determination ignited within me yet again. My heart raced with the weight of choices stretching through to me, a chain of decisions and realizations I could no longer ignore. The realization that they sought to reclaim our shared fears and mistakes threatened to unmoor me yet again. As Sam rallied everyone, weaponizing our unity into sheer willpower, I knew we stood at the cusp of a monumental decision. In the swirling shadows, could we pull strength from the crevices of our fractured bonds? Yet in that swirling maelstrom of hope and fear, a sudden explosion rang out deafening, illuminating the oppressive darkness like lightning cleaving the sky in a million shrapnels of brightness. It shook us all, and my heart dropped as the figures began to scatter, but the real shock came next, as a silhouette emerged from the chaos, a familiar face I had never expected to see again, and the truth that would shatter everything I thought I understood began to unravel before my eyes, tearing through the fragile fabric of the moment. With that jaw-dropping revelation, I realized our worst fears were still lurking just around the corner, waiting to claim their due when we least expected it. In a heartbeat, we had only scratched the surface of a storm that would unveil entirely new layers of conflict buried deep within our intertwined lives. The tension in the room thickened like fog enveloping a forgotten town, the weight of secrets and choices crushing beneath its pressure. Shadows flickered against the walls, a dance of uncertainty matched only by the pulse of my racing heart. As the silhouette emerged from the chaos, recognition sparked within me, igniting every dormant fear confined within my chest. "Jess?" I gasped, the word escaping my lips before I could catch it. My vision blurred, emotions recoiling like coiled snakes ready to strike. There she stood, my sister, the very person I thought was lost to all the mess we had made of our lives. The dormant thunderstorm of familial ties roiling beneath the surface was awakened in an instant. The room trembled with disbelief as we all processed the reality of her presence. Jess stepped closer, her eyes holding a mix of defiance and vulnerability, the unyielding spirit of a survivor forged in the fires of betrayal. "I had to come back," she said, her voice a soft breeze cutting through the storm. "You need me, Maya. We all do," but the instinct tied to my heart screamed louder than my mind could rationalize. "Need you? After everything that happened?" I choked on the memories of our family split apart, the accusation that lingered like smoke in the air, all the unspoken blame we had left unaddressed. Despite everything, I couldn't deny the flicker of hope. The ember of connection reignited as our eyes locked, years of separation folding into a tender moment that hinted at possibilities yet unexplored. Would she really stand by me despite the weight of our complicated history? Before I could grapple with that thread of hope, the volatile air surged with chaos again as our attackers regained their composure, emboldened by the sight of our sudden brittle solidarity. I sensed the impending collapse of the fragile alliance we had built amidst the chaos. "Enough of this mindless bickering," snarled the figure that had instigated our initial terror, his eyes glinting with malice. "You think you can change the past? It defines you. I refuse to let it," I shouted, surprising myself with the clarity of my voice. "You might think you own our mistakes, our fears, but you don't. We will redefine our own narrative." The words felt liberating, clawing their way out of my throat like a phoenix attempting to rise from the ashes. With renewed fervor, Jess stepped forward, her presence spotlighting the blinding cracks of resilience reforming within our group. "We are our choices, yes, but we are also not defined by them. We rebuild, together," she declared, voice ringing like a beacon in the storm. An unexpected alliance began to form, delicate yet powerful, between the figures of our past and the people we had turned into. Eliza tightened her grip on the metal chair, and Liam flashed a look of solidarity toward Jess, unearthing new connections between us. "Let's do this," Sam encouraged, his voice unwavering in the face of uncertainty, mirroring the flickering fire igniting within us. But just as the crowd began to shift towards a collective response, the ground beneath us trembled, an unearthly rumble echoing like a tide threatening to sweep away everything we had fought for. The air shimmered with an unnatural energy, and it hit Medair's presence wasn't just a manifestation of our past, it was something much more sinister. "Back!" I screamed, but it was too late. The shadows surged toward us suddenly, a tempest of fury igniting in their eyes and driving the reckoning deeper into our throats. I gripped Jess' hand tightly, an anchor against the sweeps of despair that threatened to consume us. Madness erupted as the shadows lunged forward, their forms blurring into a swirling mass of despair and resentment. A battle revered in silence danced through the air, a conflict steeped in our shared history igniting like fuel on fire. In the pandemonium, a fragment of clarity flashed through just like before. "We'll find our way through together," I cried out, and I could see the determination in their eyes, knit tightly together like threads of a tapestry woven from our collective healing. But our desperate hope was soon threatened by a bombshell. A figure lurked behind Jess, a silhouette that froze the blood in my veins. My breath caught painfully in my throat as the truth hit like a savage gale. The man standing there wore a sinister smile, one I intimately recognized. "Still think you can defy your fate?" he asked coolly, and with his presence, a chilling reality settled. Our fight was only beginning, the shadows now given form in a way I never anticipated. A truth once hidden exploded into view, leaving us vulnerable and unarmed against an enemy cloaked in familial ties threatening to unravel the very core of our newfound alliances. In that instant, everything faltered, the darkness swirling hungrily toward an awakening we were unequipped to face. Would our fraying bonds hold against the tempest now looming? Or would that familiar face shift our perceived notions of loyalty, shattering them into shards of heart-wrenching betrayal? The storm of our past roared louder than ever, poised to claim everything we had desperately sought to build. The chaos of the moment left me dizzy, the newly rekindled flame of hope threatened by the appearance of Derek, our father, the architect of our family's undoing. The very presence of him was like ice water thrown directly into the heart of a fire that had just begun to blaze. Around me, the room's air stilled briefly, suspended in collective shock, faces boiling with conflicting emotions. "Derek," Jess whispered, the name breaking free from her lips like a bolt of lightning that illuminated the shadows around us. Her expression twisted, torn between anger and the residue of remnants once held close. The fraying tapestry of our familial bond, which Jess had started to rebuild, hung precariously on the edge of unraveling. "Don't you dare think you can come back and act like everything is fine," I spat, my heart thrumming wildly as old traumas flooded back. His tyranny had divided us, yet here he was, breaking through walls we had fought tooth and nail to construct. "I came to protect what's mine, Maya," he replied smoothly, his voice a velvet glove hiding iron fists. "You think you've established new ties, but blood doesn't lie." The weight of his words pressed down on my chest like a vice, each syllable a reminder of past wounds still festering. "Protect?" I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing dryly against the walls. "You never protected us, you destroyed us." Memories of nightly confrontations, harsh words slung like knives, and my mother's tear-stained face filled my mind. Would we ever escape the suffocating shadow he cast? Behind me, I sensed Jess struggle as she stood grappling with the truth of her reality. I could feel her heartbeat echoing the conflict, confusion roiling in the core of her being, love wrestling against the shadows of betrayal. "Stop. All of you," she shouted, the command carrying an undertone of desperation that silenced even Derek momentarily. "We're done being your puppets." Her voice quivered, but the fire inside her kindled belief and propelled us forward. "We've endured enough. If we're standing here now, it's because we fought against our past. We're not afraid anymore. I locked eyes with Jess, and despite the storm brewing around us, a flicker of understanding sparked. We were no longer trapped in the web of his making, even if it was his name that entwined us. But as Jess stood resolutely, a smile flared upon Derek's lips, one that twisted into something grotesque yet familiar. "Ah, my sweet daughters. Ignorance is truly bliss. You have no idea what's coming for you." In that moment, I felt a shadow pass over us, as Derek raised his hand. My instincts kicked in. "Move!" I shouted, pushing Jess aside as the darkness coiled around him, a reflection of twisted betrayal clouding his face. But it was not Derek I feared, it was what he represented. The magnitude of pain we had carried far too long was threatening to resurface like a violent wave crashing against rocky shores. Without warning, the tendrils of shadow lashed out, aiming for Jess and I as chaos erupted once more. A shout broke from my lips as I ducked, the air sizzling with unspent anger. But before I could further assess our surroundings, I noticed Eliza and Liam moving to confront the advancing shadows, their faces set with determination. Jess' hand found mine again, squeezing tight, anchoring my swirling thoughts as we fought side by side, together. She cried, and I felt the strength radiating from her, an invisible bond tying us closer even as our fears threatened to overpower us. In the height of chaos, a spark ignited in my chest, a thread of warmth binding our past to our present. I refused to let the shadows dictate our fate any longer. We were not powerless, we were a collective tapestry woven through trials, stitches of laughter, tears, and resilience that were ours alone. Just as we gathered our strength, a blinding light surged from the corner of the room. It rippled through the darkness, illuminating the faces of those determined to stand against our past. "Come on!" shouted Sam, his voice breaking through the turmoil. I turned, taking a moment to gather the energy of everyone present. Could we really pull together against Derek and the shadows he commanded, the remnants of the family we had fought hard to rise above? But before I could contemplate it further, a familiar rasp pierced the sanctuary of hope permeating the air. "You might fight with fire, but I have the flame. You cannot escape me." His voice held both promise and threat, and Derek took a step forward, shadows swirling ominously around him as if awaiting his command. The moment felt suspended into me, a fragile whisper, a heartbeat threatening to shatter the newfound resolve. Would our united front withstand the impending wave of betrayal? Or would the past envelop us whole, anchoring us to a destiny we had fought so hard to escape? As the shadows surged forward, pulsing with malevolent energy, I glimpsed something far more visceral in Derek's eyes, a glint of something I had not seen before, anguish, perhaps? A revelation flickered, the panic intertwining with a chilling sense of dread. What if Derek wasn't just a villain in this narrative, but someone dealing with the demons of his own making? The weight of that possibility hung heavy in the air, leaving me one thought: the fight had just taken a turn I never saw coming, and my perception of loyalty might shatter beneath the crushing truth that was yet to unfold. As the shadows surged forward, propelled by Derek's tumultuous energy, time seemed to shift again, teetering on the brink of monumental change. My heart pounded wildly within my chest, the urgency coiling tightly as I wrestled with everything I had ever known. But amidst the fear and chaos, a glimmer of clarity began to form, illuminating the complex nature of the ties that bound us together, the tangled threads of family, love, and unhealed pain. Derek, for all his faults, was still my father. His looming presence shadowed my past in ways I had long tried to escape. Yet, standing next to Jess, Eliza, and Liam, I felt a familiar warmth cocooning me, softening the edges of my anxiety. We were ready to face whatever truths lay ahead, whether they were rooted in nostalgia or betrayal. Together. Jess shouted again, the fierce conviction in her voice igniting something within me, rekindling the fire of our shared determination. As I looked around the room, I saw the faces of my colleagues, the people who had become my sanctuary during a tumultuous time. I felt Sam's unwavering resolve beside me, Eliza's fierce loyalty next to Jess's newfound strength. Then, without hesitation, time stretched into action. Jess and I moved in sync, hearts beating as one as we closed the distance to our father. I could see the turmoil raging behind his darkened eyes, shadows of regret mingling with anger. He was just a man scarred and weary, lost in the battles that life had thrown at him. And for the first time, I ached to understand the storm he had endured, even if he wasn't willing to reach out to me or Jess. "Derek," I called out, my voice steadying despite the fear coursing through me. "If we're going to face this together, we need to start by being honest. All of us." I watched him falter, the shadows swirling around him losing their bite for a moment, as though they too hesitated, unsure of what to do without his command. He blinked, surprise flitting through his features, but the defiance returned quickly, like a familiar mask hiding his pain from view. "Your honesty means nothing, Maya. You are still bound to the past." Derek's voice was low, filled with bitterness, but the wretched quest for control seemed to weaken, more of a plea against vulnerability and judgment than an assertion of power. "It means everything." My voice rang with conviction, breaking through his cold facade. "The past doesn't dictate us anymore, we do." I stepped closer, the shadows caught in a standoff, wavering ever so slightly. Jess followed suit, anchoring to his side and grounding our volatile family history in the familiarity of shared blood. However twisted it had become, there was still something flickering within my heart, a desire to reclaim the connection we had lost. Suddenly, a ripple moved through the shadows as Derek's harsh exterior began to crack. I could see it reflected in his posture, the way he grappled internally, caught between the darkness that defined him and the light of potential change. Powerless against the tides of love and defiance shared within our small circle, he faltered again. "You don't understand the power they hold," he warned, the gravelly edges of desperation igniting beneath the surface, but Jess's courage surged forward just as fiercely. "We do understand. But the power fades swiftly when shared. No more control, only understanding." Her conviction bristled through the tension, a powerful pronouncement that finally severed the chains binding him to his bitterness. Derek quivered, the shadows flickered nervously, a pause sunken deep in the air as silence fell upon the room. My heart ached, not solely with fear but with an undeniable glimmer of hope. I gestured toward our group, the individuals who had faced their own demons in the cascade of chaos alongside me. "We aren't ashamed of our history or the mistakes we make, but we will not let them govern our futures." Eyes wide with disbelief, my father appeared torn between wrath and an awakening. "But you are choosing to rise," I cut him off, feeling the sense of awakening shaping the air surrounding the shadows. "Well, confront our pasts together, but you have to be one of us, not against us. Embrace the truth of what we are, and we'll find our way." The shadows around Derek began to disperse, their malevolence tethered by uncertainty, as if they were clinging to his last vestige. He opened his mouth, anguish spilling through the rough edges of his words, battling between love and regret. Then, suddenly, like a tidal wave crashing against a fragile shore, recognition swept through me, a fundamental truth coming into focus as I wrestled with the overpowering feeling swirling in my heart. In that moment, I merely yearned to be heard, to find a bridge onto which I could extend our fragile family connection, regardless of the tumultuous path we had encountered. "Derek," I implored softly, my voice breaking at the edges, "I forgive you." Those skyward words hovered heavy, but they melted the bitterness weighing against my heart. I could feel the tension snap in the air around us like the release of a tight wire. The shadows stilled but didn't recede entirely, they held tight to the remnants of his pain. Perhaps the way forward would never be simple, but Jessica rejoined the fray, stepping beside me and finding her voice. "And I forgive you, too." Each revelation arrived in sharp contrast to the emotions, the flickering shadows that broke apart with each passing heartbeat within the charged atmosphere enclosing our space. I saw a glimmer in Derek's eyes, the vulnerability of a man burdened by regret and choices he had spent years avoiding. The moment stretched as the soft glow of shared resolve filled the room, culminating in each of us wrapping our arms around the possibility of change. But it wasn't the only breakthrough at hand. With waves of emotion crashing around us, I reached toward those shadows swirling along the edges of our father's wrath, beckoning them to dissolve into the light. Yet, an unexpected twist lurked behind the surface, a tumultuous revelation ignited in the air as I felt something click anew. Shadows didn't fade entirely, they transformed, melded into colors of light that danced in sync with my heartbeat, revealing the uninhibited power of unity. Perhaps our greatest fight was not against the shadows coiling around my father. Perhaps it lay in learning to embrace the light. As Derek struggled to compose himself, a powerful realization washed over me. Our duality, the beauty of being both flawed and resilient, would build a bridge toward reconciliation, not just as a family but as individuals free of burden and fear. Just then, as the room breathed a sigh of relief and light enveloped us in a warmly familiar embrace, a sudden noise shattered the fragile harmonia. Soft thud echoed from outside. The tension returned briefly, collective uncertainty gripping us as we looked beyond the door. Is this it? Sam questioned, finding strength within his worry as the moment hung delicately before unraveling. I don't know, I responded, stepping closer to Jess and reaching for the door. But whatever it is, it's part of our journey. We face it together, and as the room shifted, the shadows dissipated, not gone but transformed into something new, a tapestry woven through our collective narratives intended to guide us forward. With a determined heart, I opened the door, and together, we stepped out into the light. The world welcomed us, a swirl of uncertainty yet to unfold, a canvas for our healing journey into acceptance. As I looked around, I realized that while the shadows were still present, they no longer held dominion over my heart. We would forge a legacy, a new beginning bold enough to beckon us through the pain into the light. In that shared moment, my voice found strength as I drew in breath, uttering the final resolution that encapsulated our journey, heartbreaking and hopeful all at once. And every shadow tells a story, we choose how we write ours.